Have you ever seen someone judged before anyone even knew the truth? What would you do if a simple visit to court suddenly turned into the biggest challenge of your life? Before we begin, take 1 second to support the channel. If stories about courage, justice, and real human strength inspire you, press the like button, subscribe, and share this video with someone who loves powerful true-style stories. Your support helps us bring you more unforgettable stories every week. Nobody inside the small courtroom expected anything unusual that morning. For most people, it was just another ordinary day. Some were there because of parking tickets. Others had small legal disputes. A few people simply wanted to pay a fine and go home before lunch. But one woman walked through those courtroom doors carrying something much heavier than a folder full of papers. She carried years of sacrifice, years of pain, years of memories that refused to disappear. Her name was Emma Carter. She was not famous. She was not rich. She was not looking for attention. She simply wanted to challenge a $40 traffic ticket that she believed had been issued by mistake. That was all. Nothing more. Nothing less. Emma worked as an emergency trauma nurse at one of the busiest hospitals in the state. Every day she helped save lives. Every day she watched families cry, celebrate, and pray. She had learned long ago that every second could decide whether someone lived or died. Because of that, she never wasted time arguing over small things. But this ticket was different. The officer claimed that the rear brake light on her car had not been working. Emma knew it was working. She had checked it herself. She even recorded a video after reaching home. The light worked perfectly. She also had a repair receipt and inspection report. She believed the court would look at the evidence and dismiss the ticket within minutes. She had no idea that the ticket would soon become the smallest part of her day. That morning Emma woke up before sunrise. Her apartment was quiet. Rainwater slowly slid down the kitchen window. The city outside was only beginning to wake up. She placed the traffic ticket on the kitchen table beside a cold cup of coffee. She stared at it for several seconds. $40 wasn't the problem. It never was. It was the idea that someone had accused her of something that wasn't true. After everything she had experienced in life, honesty mattered more than convenience. Emma slowly stood up. Her lower back reminded her of an injury that never truly healed. Some mornings were easier than others. Today was not one of them. She reached for the walking cane leaning beside the wall. Most strangers assumed she had been in a car accident. Very few people knew the real reason. Years earlier she had served as a military combat medic overseas. One terrible night changed everything. She survived. Many others survived because she refused to quit. But the injuries remained with her forever. Every step reminded her of that night. She quietly walked toward her bedroom. Inside a small wooden box rested a silver military medal. It wasn't large. It wasn't covered in diamonds. Most people wouldn't even recognize it. But to Emma, it represented something priceless. It represented every soldier she had fought to save, every friend she had lost, every promise she had made to herself. She gently pinned the medal to the left side of her jacket. Not because she wanted attention. Not because she wanted sympathy. She wore it every day. It reminded her why she continued helping people. Even when life became difficult. Even when the pain became unbearable. She looked into the mirror. No makeup. Simple clothes. Hospital scrubs hidden beneath a dark jacket. A cane in one hand. A folder in the other. She nodded to herself. Let's get this over with. Outside, the streets were still wet from the previous night's rain. Cars slowly filled the roads. People hurried toward work. Nobody noticed Emma as she unlocked her small sedan. Before getting inside, she pressed the remote key. The rear lights flashed brightly. Both lights worked perfectly. She smiled to herself. Exactly as I remembered. The courthouse stood in the center of town. It was an old building with worn-out steps and tall white columns. Thousands of people had walked through those doors over the years. Some left smiling. Others left disappointed. Emma hoped she would only spend 20 minutes inside. She still had a hospital shift waiting for her later that afternoon. Finding parking wasn't easy. She finally parked 2 blocks away. As she walked toward the courthouse, she automatically studied everything around her. Old habits never disappeared. She noticed every entrance, every security camera, every police officer, every emergency exit. Military training had taught her to observe first and relax later. Inside the courthouse, people waited in long security lines. Phones, keys, belts, everything went into plastic trays. When the security officer noticed her cane, he politely asked her to place it beside the scanner. Emma nodded. No problem. The officer smiled respectfully. He didn't ask unnecessary questions. Emma appreciated that. After passing security, she followed signs leading to Courtroom 4. The hallway outside was crowded. A young mother tried to calm her crying child. An elderly man carefully organized thick stacks of paperwork. A delivery driver nervously checked his watch every few seconds. Everyone looked stressed. Everyone wanted their case finished quickly. Emma quietly sat near the wall. Moments later, a young lawyer approached her. "Ms. Carter." She looked up. "Yes. I'm Daniel Brooks. I've been assigned to represent you today." He looked nervous. His tie was slightly crooked. His briefcase seemed too heavy for him. Emma shook his hand politely. "You've read my case?" "I have," Daniel replied. "You brought evidence?" Emma opened her folder. She handed him the inspection report, maintenance receipt, photos, time-stamped video screenshots. Daniel's eyebrows lifted. "You came prepared." Emma smiled softly. "I learned long ago that preparation saves lives." Daniel laughed. "I wish every client thought like that." They quickly reviewed everything together. "This should be simple," Daniel said confidently. "I hope you're right." People slowly entered the courtroom. The room smelled of old wood and paper. Ceiling fans turned lazily overhead. Everyone found a seat. Emma and Daniel sat near the front. The judge had not entered yet. Daniel leaned closer. "One thing." Emma looked at him. "The judge likes strict courtroom rules." "I respect rules." "Good. But..." Daniel hesitated. "He doesn't enjoy being challenged." Emma simply nodded. "I didn't come here to challenge anyone." A loud voice interrupted them. "All rise." Everyone stood. Judge Richard Holden entered the courtroom. He appeared to be in his early 60s. His white hair was perfectly combed. His expression never changed. He looked like someone who expected complete obedience the moment he entered a room. Without speaking, he sat behind the large wooden bench. The courtroom sat down with him. The first few cases moved quickly. A parking violation, a noise complaint, an unpaid city fee. Every person who tried explaining too much was interrupted. Emma quietly watched. She noticed something. The judge rarely allowed people to finish speaking. His mind often seemed made up before hearing the full story. Then an elderly veteran stepped forward. His name was George Miller. He carried a thick folder filled with military paperwork. He explained that a disability document affected his city filing. Before he could finish, Judge Holden interrupted him. "This court is not responsible for military paperwork." George tried again. "I understand, Your Honor, but these documents..." The judge cut him off. "Bring better proof next time." George slowly returned to his seat. His shoulders looked heavier than before. Emma watched silently. Something about the exchange didn't feel right. She glanced at Daniel. He quietly sighed. Before either of them spoke, the courtroom clerk looked down at the next file. She called out clearly, "Case number 147. The City versus Emma Carter." Emma stood. She picked up her folder. Daniel stood beside her. Together they walked toward the front of the courtroom. Neither of them realized that the next few minutes would completely change their lives. The entire courtroom became quiet as Emma and Daniel stopped in front of the judge's bench. Judge Richard Holden picked up the case file without looking at either of them. "Ms. Emma Carter," he said in a calm voice. "Yes, Your Honor." "You are challenging a citation for a defective rear brake light." "Yes, Your Honor." "You claim the officer made a mistake?" "I have evidence showing the light was working before and after the traffic stop." Emma gently placed her folder on the table. "I would like the court to review these documents." The judge didn't even look at the folder. Instead, his eyes slowly moved upward. He noticed Emma's hospital scrubs beneath her jacket. Then he noticed her walking cane. Finally, his eyes stopped on the silver medal pinned over her heart. The room suddenly felt smaller. Judge Holden leaned back in his chair. "What is that badge on your jacket?" Emma answered without hesitation. "It is a military medical service medal, Your Honor." The judge raised one eyebrow. "Military?" "Yes." "Is it yours?" Daniel looked surprised by the question. Emma remained perfectly calm. "Yes, Your Honor." The judge folded his hands together. "You served in the military?" "I did." "For how long?" "Several years." "And what exactly did you do?" "I served as a combat medic attached to emergency evacuation teams." The judge stared at her for several seconds. "I see." His tone changed. "So this medal represents military service?" "Yes." "Did you receive it personally?" "I did." Daniel quietly waited for the conversation to return to the traffic ticket. Instead, it moved even further away. Judge Holden looked around the courtroom before speaking again. "This court has seen many people attempt to influence legal proceedings." Nobody spoke. The judge continued. "Some wear uniforms. Some carry photographs. Some display symbols hoping to gain sympathy." Emma didn't react. She simply listened. Judge Holden looked directly at her. "How do I know that medal actually belongs to you?" The question echoed through the courtroom. Daniel immediately stood. "Your Honor." The judge raised one finger. "I'm speaking to your client." Daniel slowly sat back down. Emma answered in the same calm voice. "Because I earned it." The judge's expression didn't change. "That is your statement." "It is the truth." A few people sitting in the gallery quietly looked at each other. Even they could feel the tension growing. Judge Holden leaned forward. "Are you aware that falsely representing military honors can have serious legal consequences?" Daniel immediately objected. "Your Honor, there is absolutely no evidence suggesting my client has misrepresented anything." The judge ignored him. His attention never left Emma. "I asked you a question." Emma kept both hands resting on her cane. "I understand the law. And I also understand what I earned." For the first time, a strange silence settled over the room. Even the ceiling fans seemed louder. Judge Holden slowly removed his glasses. "You seem very confident." "I have no reason not to be." Daniel quietly whispered, "Emma." She understood his warning. He wanted her to stay careful. She appreciated it. But she also knew something important. The truth never needed to shout. It only needed to remain steady. Judge Holden crossed his arms. "Did you receive written authorization to wear that medal?" "Yes." "Can you prove it?" "Yes." Emma gently touched the folder on the table. "My military documentation is inside." The judge looked at the folder. But instead of opening it, he pushed it slightly away. "I didn't ask for papers." Emma looked confused. "You asked for proof." "I asked for an answer." "The documents are the answer." Judge Holden's face became harder. Daniel stood once again. "Your Honor, if the court has questions regarding my client's military service, she has official documentation prepared for review." The judge shook his head. "Not necessary." Daniel blinked. "Your Honor, I've seen enough." Emma spoke quietly. "You haven't seen any evidence." The sentence wasn't loud. It wasn't disrespectful. But everyone heard it. Judge Holden looked directly into her eyes. "What did you say?" "I said the documents haven't been reviewed." Daniel closed his eyes for a brief moment. He knew things were becoming dangerous. Judge Holden slowly reached for the small wooden gavel. "This courtroom operates according to my rules." Emma nodded respectfully. "I understand." "Then you should also understand that symbols designed to influence judicial proceedings are inappropriate." Emma looked at the medal on her jacket. "I wear this every day." "Convenient." "No. It reminds me why I continue serving people." The judge's patience appeared to disappear. "I am ordering you to remove that medal." The courtroom froze. Nobody expected those words. Daniel immediately stood. "Objection, Your Honor." "There is no legal basis for that order." Judge Holden struck the gavel once. "Objection overruled." Daniel refused to sit. My client has done nothing wrong. Sit down, counselor. Daniel hesitated, then slowly returned to his chair. Emma remained standing. Her expression never changed. The judge spoke again. Remove the medal. Emma answered politely. I cannot. You mean you will not? I mean I cannot remove something I earned simply because someone questioned it. A woman sitting near the back quietly covered her mouth. An elderly man slowly lowered his newspaper. Even the court clerk stopped typing. Nobody expected someone to answer with such calm confidence. Judge Holden's voice became sharper. Do you understand that refusing a direct court order could place you in contempt? Emma nodded once. I understand. And yet you still refuse? I respectfully refuse an order that has no connection to my traffic citation. Daniel quickly added, Your Honor, we're here to discuss a brake light. The issue changed, the judge replied. No, Your Honor, Daniel answered. The issue changed only because the court chose to question my client's military service. The judge struck the gavel again. Enough. He turned toward the courtroom deputy. Deputy. A tall officer standing near the wall stepped forward. His name badge read Officer Mason. He looked uncomfortable. Yes, Your Honor. Ask the defendant to comply. Officer Mason slowly walked toward Emma. He stopped only a few feet away. His voice became much quieter. Mom. Emma looked at him kindly. I don't want any problems. I know. Please understand. I'm only doing my job. Emma nodded. I understand that too. For a brief moment. Neither of them moved. Officer Mason wasn't angry. Emma wasn't angry. Both understood that they had been placed in an impossible situation. The officer quietly spoke again. If you remove the medal, this will probably end. Emma smiled sadly. No. He looked confused. Why? Because tomorrow it might happen to someone else. Officer Mason had no answer. Behind them, Judge Holden spoke loudly. Deputy, carry out the order. Before Officer Mason could move another step, someone in the courtroom stood up. It wasn't a lawyer. It wasn't a police officer. It wasn't a reporter. It was an ordinary man sitting quietly in the fifth row. He had remained silent the entire morning. He quickly walked toward the courtroom exit. Nobody paid much attention. Everyone's eyes remained fixed on Emma. Outside the courtroom, the man pulled out his phone with shaking hands. He searched through his contacts. Finally, he found one number. Without hesitation, he pressed call. Back inside the courtroom, Judge Holden looked at Emma once again. This is your final opportunity. Emma stood perfectly still. I have already given my answer. The room became completely silent. Nobody knew that at that exact moment. One phone call had already begun changing everything. If it reached the right person in time, the entire courtroom was about to witness something no one would ever forget. Inside the courtroom, nobody moved. Officer Mason stood between Emma and the judge, unsure of what to do next. Judge Richard Holden rested both hands on the bench. His expression suggested he expected Emma to surrender at any moment. But she didn't. She stood exactly where she was. Her breathing remained steady. Years of military training had taught her one lesson that she never forgot. Fear could make people react. Discipline helped people survive. Emma had survived situations far worse than an unfair courtroom. This moment would not break her. Judge Holden finally spoke again. So you have decided to ignore this court? Emma answered politely. I have decided to respect the truth. The judge shook his head. No. You have decided to challenge my authority. Emma looked directly at him. I am only protecting my integrity. Daniel slowly stood again. Your Honor, I respectfully request that the court review my client's official documents before making any further assumptions. He gently pushed the folder forward. This file contains her military records, award information, and documentation that answers every question raised today. Judge Holden didn't even touch it. I've already made my decision. Daniel couldn't believe what he had just heard. Without reviewing the evidence? I don't need to. The courtroom became even quieter. Several people exchanged confused looks. An elderly woman whispered something to her husband. Even the court reporter paused for a second before continuing to type. Emma looked at the folder, then back at the judge. I came here expecting fairness. Judge Holden answered immediately. And you received it. Emma slowly shook her head. Those words settled heavily over the room. Nobody interrupted. Nobody coughed. Nobody looked at their phones anymore. Everyone was watching. Officer Mason quietly stepped back. He no longer wanted to stand between Emma and the bench. He understood this wasn't really about him. Near the back row, the courtroom doors suddenly opened. Everyone turned their heads. 3 people entered together. 2 wore formal military uniforms. The third was an older man dressed in a dark business suit. The military officers walked with calm confidence. Not quickly. Not dramatically. Just professionally. Every step echoed across the wooden floor. The courtroom clerk looked confused. Judge Holden frowned. This courtroom is currently in session. The older officer nodded politely. I understand. His voice carried naturally across the room. Without raising it. Without demanding attention. Yet everyone listened. My name is Lieutenant General Samuel Grant. A ripple of surprise spread through the gallery. Daniel slowly looked toward Emma. Emma recognized him immediately. She hadn't seen him in years. General Grant continued walking until he reached the front of the courtroom. He stopped a respectful distance from the judge's bench. Your Honor, may I approach? Judge Holden hesitated. Every eye in the courtroom remained fixed on him. After several seconds, you may. General Grant stepped forward carrying a sealed document folder. Behind him, one of the officers quietly remained near the aisle. The second officer stood beside the courtroom doors. Neither man spoke. General Grant carefully placed the folder on the bench. This contains the certified military service record of Ms. Emma Carter. Judge Holden looked down. For the first time that morning, he actually opened a folder. Inside were official military documents, award certificates, deployment records, medical retirement papers, verification letters. Everything carried government seals. Every page had signatures. Every document matched the next. General Grant calmly continued speaking. I personally supervised part of Ms. Carter's medical evacuation unit during her second overseas deployment. The courtroom remained silent. I also attended the ceremony where she received the medal currently displayed on her jacket. Judge Holden slowly looked toward Emma, then back at the documents. General Grant spoke once more. Every question regarding her military service has already been answered by these records. Daniel quietly smiled. He finally felt someone was listening. Judge Holden cleared his throat. This court was simply attempting to verify information. General Grant nodded respectfully. Verification begins by reviewing evidence. Nobody in the room missed the meaning of those words. Judge Holden turned another page. His face slowly changed. Not dramatically. Just enough for everyone nearby to notice. General Grant pointed toward one document. That page contains the official recommendation for her military decoration. Another page. That one includes witness statements. Another. Those pages contain medical records explaining the permanent injuries she suffered while saving wounded soldiers. Emma lowered her eyes. She never enjoyed hearing those memories discussed in public. General Grant noticed. His voice became softer. Ms. Carter never asked for recognition. She asked only for fairness. Daniel looked toward Emma. For the first time all morning. She looked tired. Not frightened. Not angry. Simply exhausted. Judge Holden carefully removed one certificate from the folder. You were injured during active duty? Emma nodded. Yes, Your Honor. The walking cane. It became part of my life afterward. Again. Silence. The courtroom suddenly understood something important. The cane wasn't there to gain sympathy. The medal wasn't there to gain attention. They were simply parts of Emma's everyday life. General Grant continued. There is something else the court should know. Judge Holden looked up. On the night Ms. Carter received these injuries. He paused. She refused evacuation until every wounded soldier under her care had been safely transported. Several people quietly lowered their heads. One woman wiped away tears. Daniel couldn't stop staring at Emma. He had known she served. He never realized what she had survived. General Grant smiled gently. I've worked with thousands of soldiers. Very few showed the courage Miss Carter demonstrated that night. Emma looked uncomfortable. She never liked compliments, especially public ones. Judge Holden slowly closed the military file. For several long seconds, nobody said anything. Then Daniel stood. Your Honor, based on the certified documentation now before the court, I respectfully request dismissal of the traffic citation. And I also request that today's statements questioning my client's military service be removed from the official record. Judge Holden didn't answer immediately. He stared down at the documents once again. Everyone waited. Even Officer Mason watched quietly. Finally, Judge Holden picked up his pen. He signed the traffic citation, then looked toward Emma. The citation is dismissed. Daniel released a long breath. Emma simply nodded. But Daniel wasn't finished. Your Honor, what about the contempt warning? Judge Holden hesitated. There will be no contempt finding. Daniel nodded. And the implication that my client misrepresented her military service? The judge looked toward General Grant, then back at Emma. There will be no further questions regarding her military record. General Grant quietly closed the folder. Thank you, Your Honor. Emma reached for her documents. Her lower back suddenly reminded her how long she had been standing. A sharp pain crossed her face for only a second. General Grant noticed immediately. So did Officer Mason. Without saying anything, Officer Mason quietly moved a nearby chair closer. Emma looked at him. Thank you. The deputy smiled. You've been standing long enough. Emma sat for just a moment. The courtroom remained completely silent. Nobody rushed toward the exit. Nobody whispered. Everyone seemed to realize they had witnessed something much bigger than a traffic ticket. They had watched truth slowly defeat assumptions. And they had watched dignity remain calm under pressure. Just before Emma stood to leave, someone near the back quietly began clapping. One person, then another. Within seconds, the entire courtroom was filled with respectful applause. Nobody had planned it. It simply happened. Even Daniel looked surprised. Emma looked down, slightly embarrassed. General Grant smiled proudly. Judge Holden remained silent. His expression revealed nothing. But everyone in that room understood one thing. The morning had not gone the way he expected. As Emma slowly walked toward the courtroom doors with Daniel beside her, she believed everything was finally over. She had no idea. Outside the courthouse, hundreds of thousands of people had already started watching what happened inside. And before sunset, the entire country would be talking about this courtroom. Emma slowly walked out of the courtroom with Daniel and General Grant beside her. The hallway outside felt strangely quiet. For a few moments, nobody spoke. It was as if everyone needed time to understand what had just happened. Daniel finally broke the silence. I've handled dozens of court cases, but I've never witnessed anything like today. Emma smiled gently. I didn't want any of it. I know. You only wanted your ticket dismissed. Emma nodded. Exactly. Before they reached the courthouse exit, General Grant stopped. Emma. She turned. I owe you an apology. Emma looked surprised. For what? I should have contacted you years ago. You earned recognition, but more importantly, you deserved respect. Emma shook her head. You came today. That's enough. The general smiled. Some people never change. Emma laughed softly. I've been told that before. Outside, the warm afternoon sun covered the courthouse steps. People stood across the street holding their phones. Several local reporters had already arrived. Camera crews quickly moved into position. Microphones appeared from every direction. Emma, can we ask you a question? What happened inside? Do you plan to file a complaint? How do you feel right now? Emma stopped for only a moment. She looked calmly toward the cameras. I came here because of a traffic ticket. The reporters waited. I simply wanted the truth to be heard. Nothing more. Nothing less. She politely continued walking. No dramatic speech. No anger. No celebration. Just quiet dignity. Meanwhile, inside the courthouse, Judge Richard Holden remained alone behind his bench. The courtroom was almost empty. He looked once more at the military documents still lying before him. For the first time that day, he seemed uncertain, not because someone had shouted louder, but because undeniable evidence had quietly spoken for itself. Outside the courthouse, the video recorded by one of the spectators had already spread across social media. Thousands became hundreds of thousands. Hundreds of thousands became millions. People from every part of the country watched the same moment. The moment the judge questioned Emma's medal. The moment she calmly refused to remove it. The moment General Grant entered the courtroom. The internet exploded with discussion. Many people praised Emma's composure. Veterans thanked her publicly. Doctors and nurses shared the video. Military organizations posted messages of support. Within hours, television stations began covering the story. That afternoon, Emma arrived at St. Mary's Regional Trauma Center for her hospital shift. To everyone else, it looked like an ordinary workday. But inside the hospital, people had already seen the video. Some nurses quietly smiled as she entered. Others simply nodded with respect. Emma preferred that. She never wanted attention. Her supervisor, Sarah Mitchell, met her near the nurses' station. "You okay?" Emma placed her bag inside her locker. "I'm ready to work." Sarah smiled. "I expected that answer." The emergency room was already busy. An elderly patient needed immediate care. A child had a broken arm. An accident victim had just arrived by ambulance. Without another thought, Emma returned to doing what she loved. Helping people. Saving lives. Comforting frightened families. Exactly as she had done every day before the courtroom incident. Several hours later, during a short break, Emma finally looked at her phone. Hundreds of missed calls. Thousands of messages. Former military friends. Hospital co-workers. Old classmates. Complete strangers. Many simply wrote one sentence. "Thank you." Emma quietly placed the phone back into her pocket. She didn't need to read every message. Knowing people understood the truth was enough. Across town, Judge Holden's day was far from over. The court administration had already received numerous complaints. The State Judicial Review Board requested copies of the courtroom recording. Local officials wanted explanations. Several legal organizations questioned the judge's conduct. Nothing had been decided yet. But one thing was certain. People wanted answers. Days later, Emma received an unexpected phone call. It was George Miller, the elderly veteran she had seen earlier that morning. "Ms. Carter?" "Yes. I wanted to thank you." Emma smiled. "For what?" "I spent years trying to convince people to read my paperwork. This week, they finally did." Emma remained silent. George continued. "After your case became public, my documents were reviewed. My issue was resolved." Emma closed her eyes for a moment. Sometimes, the biggest victories weren't the ones people celebrated on television. Sometimes, the greatest victory was helping someone nobody else noticed. Weeks passed. Life slowly returned to normal. The reporters eventually found new stories. The headlines changed. The cameras disappeared. But Emma's routine remained exactly the same. Wake up early. Go to work. Help patients. Return home. Repeat. One rainy evening, Daniel visited the hospital after work. He carried 2 cups of coffee. "I thought you might need this." Emma laughed. "I definitely do." They sat together in the staff lounge. Daniel looked thoughtful. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Weren't you angry?" Emma looked out the window. The rain reminded her of that courtroom morning. "I was." Daniel looked surprised. "You never showed it." Emma smiled. "My military instructor once told me something. When emotions control your decisions, someone else controls your future." Daniel nodded slowly. "So staying calm was your strongest response?" Emma looked at him. Exactly. Silence filled the room. After several moments, Daniel smiled. I learned more from one morning with you than from 3 years of law school. Emma laughed. I hope not. Ido. Months later, General Grant invited Emma to speak at a ceremony honoring military medical personnel. At first, she refused. Public speaking had never interested her. Eventually, he convinced her. When Emma stood at the podium, hundreds of veterans filled the audience. Young medics, doctors, nurses, military families. She looked around the room, then spoke only a few simple words. A medal is only metal. It doesn't define a person. What defines us is what we choose to do when nobody is watching. The audience became completely silent. She continued. Titles disappear. Positions change. Fame fades. But character stays with us forever. When she finished, the audience stood together, not because of the medal, not because of the courtroom, but because every person in that room recognized genuine humility. Years later, people would remember the viral video. Many would remember the judge. Others would remember the courtroom. But those who truly understood the story remembered something much deeper. A woman never raised her voice. She never insulted anyone. She never demanded respect. She simply stood by the truth. And sometimes, that is the strongest thing any human being can do. If this story touched your heart, don't let it end here. Click like, subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories, and share this video with your friends and family. One share can inspire someone who needs hope today. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next story.